House and Senate Republicans have offered up a Congressional Review Act resolution condemning the Biden admin for its many-faceted attacks on gun owners and the gun industry. And they're using a strategy with some power to overturn the Biden ATF's flagrant misuse of power. Just like in any relationship, it's good to reaffirm your love every once in a while. So, from gun owners across the country,
thanks, honey.
And our 2A For Today Modern Militiaman spotlight is on Vermillion, South Dakota, where a man unlawfully and forcefully entered a home. I guess he took the welcome mat a little too seriously because he was absolutely unwelcome. And that should have been clear by the restraining order that he was violating by even being within 500 feet from the home. Now, he's having a permanent out-of-body experience. Perhaps the restraining order was issued to protect him from himself. Thank you for watching 2A For Today. This is Zoe. You know, many of these Republicans are squishy on a lot of things. They very often don't abide the separation of powers in their policy making, or they just straight up violate the Constitution. However, it's a pleasant surprise when they take up their duty to secure our rights. Granted, writing angry letters or passing resolutions that only frown upon the activity of the criminal-in-chief Joe Biden will likely be disregarded and won't move the ball forward. Some of those strongly worded letters help us expose some Democrats in gun rights country, or limp-wristed gun-grabbing Republicans who have a primary opponent, but they're not completely useless. However, Republicans have taken a stronger route with some oversight power this time. Congressman Andrew Clyde out of Georgia and 86 original co-sponsors introduced a Congressional Review Act, a joint resolution of disapproval to overturn the ATF rule that has criminalized law-abiding citizens who dare to sell their own firearms without permission and without paying tribute.
A traitor and a conspirator against the state.
We've been talking about the new decree from Lord Merrick Garland that his most exalted one signed into law in his own mind in April that redefined how the ATF interprets the term engaged in business. According to a press release from Congressman Clyde, the rule requires private citizens to obtain a federal firearms license, conduct a background check, and complete gun registration paperwork to sell even a single firearm. Congressman Clyde goes on to say, time and time again, the Biden administration abuses its rulemaking authority to infringe on Americans' unalienable right to keep and bear arms. The ATF's engaged in the business rule represents President Biden's latest effort to institute universal background checks, advance the left's radical gun control agenda, and violate the American people's Second Amendment freedoms. Private citizens must never be forced to jump through unelected anti-gun bureaucrats' unconstitutional hurdles to engage in lawful firearms transactions. I urge my colleagues in both chambers to support our measure to overturn the ATF's disastrous rule. The Congressional Review Act requires GAO to report on major rules that federal agencies make, including summaries of the procedural steps taken by the agencies. The act also provides Congress with the power to use a little-known oversight tool to overturn final rules issued by federal agencies. According to a report by the Congressional Research Service, the CRA, the Congressional Review Act, requires agencies to report the issuance of rules to Congress and provides Congress with special procedures in the form of a joint resolution of disapproval under which to consider legislation to overturn their rules. If a CRA joint resolution of disapproval is approved by both houses of Congress and signed by the president, or if Congress successfully overrides a presidential veto, the rule at issue cannot go into effect or continue in effect. That's a pretty dang high bar for some bureaucrats to be able to write laws. I mean, essentially, they're writing policies with the force of law. Senators John Cornyn and Tom Tillis are leading the companion resolution in the Senate. This rule is proof that the Biden administration is a dishonest broker, and Congress must hold it accountable for its actions in favor of its gun-grabbing liberal base over the constitutional rights of law-abiding Americans, said Senator Cornyn. Senator Tillis expressed a similar sentiment. This overreach is exactly why Republicans don't trust this administration, and it will set back any attempt on future bipartisan legislation as long as President Biden is in office. I encourage my colleagues to support this CRA we introduced and immediately overturn these ridiculous regulations. Now, the problem with this is that we really need to reform the Administrative Procedures Act. and the executive office of the president. Without necessary reforms, they'll keep on doing this. Even when Republicans get in office, it may wane, but it'll be back roaring like a lion. So what happens, though, if the resolution of disapproval passes? The Congressional Research Service indicates that a rule that's the subject of an enacted CRA joint resolution of disapproval goes out of effect immediately, if the rule has already taken effect when the resolution of disapproval is enacted. And it will be treated as though such rule had never taken effect. If the rule has not yet gone into effect when the resolution of disapproval is enacted, it won't take effect. Also, the rule may not be reissued in substantially the same form, and a new rule that is substantially the same may not be issued unless the reissued or new rule is specifically authorized by a law enacted after the date of the joint resolution. So, the chances of Biden signing it, slim. The chances of it passing the Senate, slim to none. The utility of the resolution, however, is great, especially in an election year, and especially at a time where primary voters are watching their electeds far more closely. And our 2A For Today Modern Militiaman spotlight is on Vermillion, South Dakota, where a man unlawfully and forcefully entered a home. I guess he took the welcome mat a little too seriously because he was absolutely unwelcome. That should have been clear by the restraining order that he was violating by even being 500 feet from the home. Now, he's having a permanent out-of-body experience. Perhaps the restraining order was issued to protect him from himself. It was midnight in a quiet South Dakota community when 38-year-old Chase Kinchin was found struggling to survive a fatal gunshot wound that he brought upon himself. According to KCAU 9, the man unlawfully and forcefully entered a residence armed with a handgun in violation of a protection order prohibiting him from contact with the resident or from entering a zone of 500 feet surrounding the home. They report that Kinchin threatened the resident and a guest. The guest ran for his life.
Then I ran out. I didn't grab no shoes or nothing, Jesus. I ran for my life.
The guest ran to the attached garage where his pursuer, the deceased perp, fired a shot at him. The guest was able to retrieve a handgun from the vehicle and returned fire. The well-placed shot put down the predator. Officers and EMS tried to preserve the man's life, but he died from his wound on the scene. Listen, everybody in that house that survived are lucky to be alive. When it comes down to it, there are rarely any second chances. It's in our best interest as a free people to be armed and trained, not just for our own defense, but for the defense of our neighbors. This is one of those 10,000 examples that take place every year, so stay safe out there. That concludes our program. My name is Zoe. Thank you for watching 2A For Today.
They say I'm part of a global plan. I don't think so. It's too hot, it's too cold. You know what? The weather changes.
Here's the news, Dad.
Nope. It's hard to tell what's real and what's fake these days.
Ditch the fake news and always get the truth. Go to thenewamerican.com.